Welcome to the Chosson and Kallah Shmooze you wish you had but never got, Part 3. So, as I have reminded everybody in past discussions, please study these videos in order because there are one concept that builds on another, and it's vital that the right foundation is laid. And we are going to talk in these videos about many of the common and also uncommon problems that people experience in their marriage. And we are going to work our way to extremely sensitive materials such as sexual dysfunction, addiction, sex therapy, everything that you really want to know, but we're afraid to ask. However, just like in real life, sexual intimacy begins with quality emotional intimacy, and there really is no intimacy without trust. You and I, us listeners and us studiers of this material, we have to bring ourselves step by step into the process. We have to develop our minds, our intellect, and our character so that when we approach the sexual material, which we will approach in these discussions, we have a firm foundation, hashkafically, psychologically, emotionally, in the basis of marriage. And so today we're going to talk about some common challenges in relationships. And specifically, we're going to talk about distorted views. Now, a distorted view, a distorted idea, is when somebody has a certain belief, and that belief colors their expectations and their emotional process. So, as an example, let's say I have a belief that my parents, even as an adult, my parents have an obligation to take care of me. Now, I'm not going to get into whether or not that is actually a distorted belief or not. I leave that for you to ponder as both children of parents and parents of children. However, think about it for a minute. Let's say that it was a distorted belief, but a person had a very strongly held conviction that parents should take care of their adult children. So then someone goes and asks their parent or parents to help them out financially. And the parent either declines because they don't have the funds, or maybe just because they don't feel like it. Now this will create a lot of crushing disappointment, possibly resentment, and strife. Why? Because of the underlying belief that parents should take care of children. Now, again, I'm leaving it up to you right now to think about whether or not that's a distorted belief or not. But if it were a distorted belief, it would cause a lot of trouble. If it were not distorted belief, it might be justified. So what we believe makes a tremendous impact. It affects us fundamentally in how we feel. And the Rambam says as much in the end of Hilchos Tamura. He says that the majority of the mitzvahs, in general, the majority of them, their main function is lisakein hadeos v'liyasher kol ha'maasim. He says that the function of the majority of the mitzvahs are to correct the beliefs and to straighten, to make just the actions. Notice the order. Correct the beliefs and make just and straight the actions. Meaning you must have correct beliefs in order to have the proper actions. Reflected similarly in Pirkei Avos, Ein Amoritz Chassid. Somebody who is not learned cannot excel and do the superior behavior. And it also says Ein Bor Yirei Chet, and somebody who's a bore, somebody who's devoid of knowledge and intellect, can't really fear sin. Why? Because in order to be able to behave properly, you need to have the correct views. So in this discussion, and probably a number of succeeding discussions, because it is a complex topic, I'm going to go through 13 common distorted beliefs that sabotage marital harmony. And my first one, and my most favorite one, is the belief that whatever somebody does to you, you need to give back to them. For better or for worse, meaning if somebody is good to you, now you're obligated, or you feel obligated or justified in being good to them. But also, obviously, more toxically, is the sense that if somebody is bad to you in a relationship, if somebody is hurtful, that they have it coming, and that somehow or another you should get back at them. And I find it fascinating when I work with families and couples. It's a deeply rooted belief. It's almost like, we read in the Torah and in all the Midrashei Chazal this concept that God is just, that Hashem punishes a sinner and rewards the one who does mitzvos, the tzaddik. By the way, that is a very complicated topic, and if you'd like, on my other YouTube channel, Faith Without Fear, you will see a rather long video, about 30 minutes long, that discusses is God punishing us or not. But let's go with a simple explanation that God rewards the just and punishes the sinner. So people have this concept that it's almost godly. It's just the right thing to take vengeance against people who mistreat you, and to reward those who do good for you. But actually, we're not God. God is just, and he runs the universe and all those good things. Who in the world gave you the idea that you could be like God? Now, there is a function of Besdin, teachers, parents. There is such a function to discipline. And the word discipline in either Latin or Greek, I don't know, but it comes from the word to teach. But there is also the concept of enforcement. Society enforces its rules, and Besdin, or even teachers or parents, may at times choose, I think with a lot of discretion and care, but may choose in some way to use some form of emotional, verbal aggression to enforce their rules. You can do that if you want to do that, if you're acting very sincerely. It's important to study all those rules in Chavetz Chaim, Lavin 8 and 9, where he goes into that in detail. But assuming that your motivations are pure, you might be able to in some way punish people. But your spouse is not your child, and your spouse is not somebody that punishment's going to work very well with. The standards of behavior, the way in which human beings relate to each other today, what's considered derech eretz, is you do not punish your spouse, whether it's God forbid physically, but even verbally or emotionally. We don't do that, and to do it only makes your relationship miserable. Aside from that, it really is a violation. Probably, if the intention is not pure, it's a violation of lo sikum v'lo sitor, which, not coincidentally, is this week's parsha. Achrei Mos Kedoshim is, at least at the time that I'm giving the video. Others may be looking at this video at a different time, but it says, lo sikum v'lo sitor, do not take revenge and do not bear a grudge. Now, how that's defined halachically, that's in Vayikra, Perek Yud Tes Pasuk Yud Ches. How that's defined halachically is the Gemara Yuma on Daf Chav Gimel Amud Aleph. In the Gemara Yuma, it's also in the Rashi and Chumash, that basically lo sinkum is if somebody asked a favor from you and you decline that favor. Someone asks you a favor, they want to borrow something from you, and you decline. The next time, somewhere in the future, you have an opportunity, the person asks you for a favor, And now you say to yourself, wait a second, he didn't do me a favor, and now I'm not going to do him a favor back. That's considered lo sikom. And lo sitor is considered if the person asks you the favor and you respond, your response is, well, I'm not like you who didn't lend me a shovel yesterday. I'm better than you. I'm going to lend this to you. That's considered lo sitor. That's bearing a grudge. The correct approach, the way one is supposed to handle situations like that, as the Rambam describes in Perek Vav, Hilchos Deos Halacha Vav, and also is essentially a pasuk chumash, because right before lo sikum lo sitor it says hochiach tochichas amisecha, you shall rebuke your friend. The way to do it is Johnny on the spot, or at the first possible moment that it seems that what you're saying could be accepted and understood well, is if somebody hurts your feelings or does something to hurt you, you unburden yourself, not in a hurtful way, but in a direct way, and say, hey, why'd you do that to me? That really hurt. And then the person might explain to you a good justification, and you'll be able to let go. Or maybe the person will feel rebuked, and they're going to apologize. Or maybe they'll ignore you, but at least you didn't keep it inside. Now, this is what the Rambam talks about. But the opposite is, in a relationship, if you exact a vengeance against somebody else, and I'm not talking about some elaborate revenge scheme, I'm talking about you're angry at your spouse, an hour later your spouse says, hey, you want to watch TV? Or hey, how about you do the dishes? Or even maybe something as mild as your spouse smiles at you, and you give them the cold shoulder. You know, a smile is also a chesed, right? The halachic definition of what's considered nekama is withholding a chesed, withholding a kindness on the basis of past behavior. Now, we at times can withhold kindness. I wish I can help you. I'm too busy right now. I don't have the time. I don't think I'm able to do it properly. All those things are judgment calls, like any mitzvah saseh, to do a chesed, which it's interesting whether it's a d'oraisa or d'rabbanan. We can debate those points, but it's definitely a mitzvah, and it's a mitzvah saseh. Anytime you have a mitzvah saseh, you have to weigh and measure whether you're able to do it right now. We can't do all the mitzvahs all at the same moment. I can't give charity, do kindness, study Torah, put on tefillin, all those things at the same time. In fact, there's a concept, osek b'mitzvah potem in a mitzvah, which is also rather complex because it doesn't always apply, especially to Torah study. But the issue here is you can decline doing something for somebody else, but not on the basis of how they treated you. And if you create in your relationship such a dynamic, it is a disaster. It's a living hell, and I'm going to tell you why. Because most of the time when we do something wrong, we either have a rationalization, good or bad, or we're not even aware of it. So what usually happens is you're angry because somebody close to you mistreated you. Most of the time, they don't realize, or they have a justification. So now you mistreat them back. But in their mind, you are the instigator. Quote, you started. Now you're the one that's mistreating them. And it becomes a spiral. It becomes an arms race and an escalation of horrible, disgusting behavior, sometimes on a small scale and, God forbid, sometimes on a large scale. If you create in your relationship an amnesty policy, we are always going to try to be good to each other, regardless of how the other person treats us. We are going to try to be good based on our values, meaning I am a husband, I am a wife. I think to myself, what is a good way to be a husband or a wife? And I act based on the values. I don't act based on how I'm being treated. Then if two people enter into that pact without bean counting and keeping track who did more nice or who forgave more transgressions, then you're really living in Olam Haba. Can you imagine? I can imagine. I can tell you I can imagine. Because after years and years of hard work, I was zocha, at least some of the time, to live in such a situation. Years and years. It's not something you can do in a day to change the whole flow of your lifestyle and your attitudes. But think about that. Can you imagine living in a situation where you have a certain kind of emotional amnesty, where the other person will not mistreat you, even if you mess up, even if you do something awful, the person will tell you, hey, you really hurt my feelings. We need to hash this out. But the person won't withhold emotionally from you. Now, if you could create that kind of environment, you're living in Olam Haba. I invite all of you to continue to listen to these lectures, and I also thank you. I actually need to thank all of you because you are the sponsors of these videos, not just because knowing that people are going to listen to them, but also because I appreciate those who reach out to me. I'm available for counseling, individual, one-on-one, Zoom. I also have a roughly corresponding write-up of the Chosson and Kallah Shmooze you wish you had and you never got, and that's available for purchase via a PDF file. So keep in touch, and I hope we will continue this discussion.